The wind howled like a chorus of ancient whispers, swirling leaves in dizzying circles around the crooked iron gate of the old Thornberry house. Rain drummed upon the roof in hurried rhythms, like tiny feet running across the shingles. Thunder rolled low and slow above, and every crack of lightning painted the garden in silver-blue flashes, revealing wild, waving weeds and a leaning stone bird bath long claimed by moss. Inside, the attic creaked. It wasn't just the usual sound of settling wood or wind catching the eaves. It was something else, something soft and rhythmic, like the tap-tap-tap of footsteps, or perhaps the gentle tip-tap of something brushing against the rafters. Beneath the crooked rafters, where forgotten boxes slumped beside old trunks and worn woolen coats, a single item hung quietly on a wooden peg, an umbrella. Not just any umbrella. Its fabric was deep navy with tiny stars stitched along the edges in golden thread. Its curved handle was carved from polished oak, smoothed by age and touch. Despite the dust around it, not a speck of dirt clung to it. It stood perfect, proud, and still until the attic door clicked open. Mira, just shy of 8 years old, peered in with wide eyes. She had never been allowed in the attic before, not until today. Downstairs, Grandpa lay resting on the living room couch, his gentle snores muffled by a wool blanket. He had said the umbrella was special, that it must never be opened unless she truly needed it. But Mira didn't understand why. It was just an umbrella, or so she thought. As another rumble of thunder shook the windows, Mira stepped into the attic, the wooden floor sighing beneath her small feet. Her hand reached out. The umbrella trembled. Mira's fingers brushed the umbrella's handle, and the attic seemed to breathe in. The shadows flickered. The air grew still, as if the whole house were holding its breath. Mira paused, her heart thumping softly against her ribs, but curiosity pressed her forward. She curled her hand around the smooth wooden hook and lifted the umbrella from its peg. It was heavier than she expected. As she turned it over in her hands, the golden stars along the edge shimmered faintly, like they remembered the sky. She hesitated only a moment before she slowly, carefully pushed the button to open it. With a soft whoomph, the umbrella bloomed into a perfect circle above her head. At once, the attic changed. Gone were the creaky boards and cobwebs. Around her spun a whirl of silver mist, curling in rings and swirls like living smoke. The walls melted into haze, and the ceiling stretched high above into a dome of cloudy twilight. Mira blinked. The floor beneath her feet turned to stone, smooth, ancient, and carved with strange, glowing symbols. The umbrella hummed quietly in her hand, and a path of light unfurled ahead, winding through the mist like a ribbon. Mira took one step, then another. The air smelled different now, not dusty, but cool and sharp, like mountain air or the breeze before a snowstorm. She followed the lighted path, her umbrella glowing gently above her, the stars on its edges now pulsing with soft golden light. Shapes began to form within the mist. Trees, with twisting trunks and silver leaves, leaned in to watch her pass. Tiny bells jingled somewhere in the distance, and a low, hollow horn sounded once, as if calling something to wake. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the mist parted, and Mira found herself standing on the edge of a great stone bridge. Beneath the bridge flowed a river not of water, but of time. She could feel it. The current glittered with memories. In its swirling depths, she glimpsed a boy flying a red kite, a girl blowing out birthday candles, a baby laughing in a high chair. The river whispered and sighed with every second that passed. At the center of the bridge stood a tall figure cloaked in blue robes, their face hidden beneath a deep hood. They held a staff that ticked like a clock. As Mira stepped forward, the figure raised a gloved hand and pointed to her umbrella. A soft voice echoed through the space, not spoken aloud, but inside her thoughts. Only those with the time-trapped umbrella may walk the paths between moments, the voice said. You carry a gift older than seasons, woven from lost seconds and forgotten hours. Mira wanted to speak, to ask what this place was, but her voice stayed locked in her chest. The figure turned and motioned her forward, guiding her across the bridge. The umbrella shielded her from the river's pull, and the moment her foot touched the other side, the landscape changed again. Now she stood in a wide meadow under a green sky. Enormous dandelions swayed gently in the breeze, each as tall as a house. Fluttering between them were birds made of parchment, flapping slowly with wings that rustled like turning pages. A great clock tower loomed in the distance, its hands moving backward. The figure in blue was gone. Mira stood alone. A soft rustling at her feet made her glance down. A mouse in a waistcoat looked up at her with glittering eyes, then scampered off into the tall grass. Mira followed, and the grass parted ahead of her like opening curtains. She passed through strange gardens where time moved strangely. Flowers opened and closed in seconds. Trees dropped their leaves, only to regrow them in a blink, and shadows spun in circles around their owners. She came to a glade where a girl about her age sat beneath a weeping willow. The girl looked sad, her chin resting on her knees. When Mira stepped closer, the umbrella shivered again. A ripple moved through the air, and a memory spilled into the open. It was Grandpa Young, bright-eyed, and laughing as he twirled the same umbrella over his head. The girl under the tree was his sister. Mira somehow knew this without being told. She watched as the young grandpa chased fireflies with her, their laughter echoing like music. Then the memory flickered and faded, and the glade returned to silence. Mira sat beside the girl, though they could not speak. Still, the air grew warmer, and the willow leaves rustled gently above them. Mira felt a quiet sadness in her chest, a longing for something lost long ago. When she stood again, the girl gave her a slow, grateful nod. The umbrella tugged at her hand. Back on the path, time twisted faster. Mira passed scenes that shimmered around her like dream bubbles. A clock with wings soared above. A sleepy cat napped atop a moonbeam. An old woman knelt beside a well, whispering wishes to the water. Mira didn't stop, though her heart pulled at each wonder. The umbrella was leading her now. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew hard against her. The umbrella bucked in her hand, the stars flashing wildly. A tear opened in the sky, spilling black mist across the path. From the rip came a creature made of tangled roots and shadows, its eyes burning with lost time. It snarled not with sound, but with a heavy silence that made Mira stumble backward. The umbrella glowed brighter, its stars flaring like tiny suns, but the creature lunged. Mira turned and ran. The path twisted beneath her, and the creature chased, each of its steps causing the ground to ripple and crack. Mira's breath came in sharp bursts. She could feel the creature gaining. The umbrella pulled her faster, guiding her toward a door floating in midair, made entirely of ticking gears. She leapt. The door opened. Darkness swallowed her whole. Then silence. When Mira opened her eyes, she was in a quiet forest bathed in golden light. The umbrella hung above her like a lantern, casting gentle warmth across the glade. A small cottage sat nestled between two trees, and from its chimney rose soft curls of smoke. The door creaked open, and out stepped Grandpa, not old and slow, but younger, with dark hair and a kind smile. He looked right at her, though surely this was just another memory. But something felt different. Grandpa bent down and placed something into a wooden box. Mira stepped closer and saw it was a clock with a crack across its face. A faint tear glittered in his eye as he closed the lid. She understood then this was the day he stopped believing in time's magic. The day he locked it away. Mira touched the umbrella to the box. A hum filled the air, and the crack in the clock shimmered, then healed. The cottage faded. The forest dissolved. Mira stood once more in the attic, the umbrella whole in her hands, the stars quiet and still. Thunder rumbled outside, but the storm had passed. Downstairs, Grandpa stirred. Mira tiptoed back to the living room. The umbrella remained at her side, folded but faintly warm. Grandpa looked at her and smiled softly, knowingly. Neither said a word, but something between them had changed. That night, as moonlight spilled across the floor and the house whispered in its sleep, Mira lay awake in bed with the umbrella beside her. She couldn't stop thinking about what she had seen, the river of time, the girl beneath the willow, and the dark creature with burning eyes. Her heart ached with questions too big to name. Why had Grandpa never told her about the places the umbrella could take her? Why had time grown tangled and dangerous in some corners, yet gentle and warm in others? The umbrella pulsed faintly, as if sensing her thoughts. Then a sound soft, crackling, like pages turning in the wind drifted through her window. She sat up. The trees outside shimmered strangely. as though dusted in silver. The night didn't feel still anymore. It felt restless. Down the hall, Grandpa's door was open. Myra stepped into the hallway. The air felt cold against her bare arms, and the shadows trembled across the walls. Grandpa's room was empty. The blankets were tossed aside, and the lamp on the nightstand flickered, though no one had touched it. The umbrella trembled in her hand. Something was wrong. She hurried downstairs, her small feet quiet against the wooden steps. The front door stood wide open, swinging gently on its hinges. Outside, the garden had vanished. In its place stretched a sea of mist, glowing faintly like moonlight on water. Floating above it all was a trail of broken time, scattered clocks, bending paths, and ticking orbs that spun in the air like stars. And there, far ahead, walked Grandpa, but not as she had seen him last. His back was bent with age, but his steps were quick and determined, almost too fast for his cane. Around him, the mist curled in hungry loops. Shadows trailed at his heels. Mira's breath caught in her chest. He was going back. Without thinking, she raised the umbrella. It opened with a soft shudder, and the stars flared awake once more. Light spilled from the canopy and wrapped around her. The ground beneath her disappeared. In a blink, she was soaring. She passed through ticking tunnels and time folds, gliding over memories and echoes, chasing the one person who had always seemed steady, Grandpa, who once told her that some memories were too heavy to carry and others too precious to forget. He was walking into the oldest part of time. The umbrella hummed, but slower now, almost heavy in her grip. Then she saw it. A gate made of mirrors, tall as the sky, stood open before a land where the stars blinked backward and the clocks all ticked in reverse. Beyond it stood the girl from the willow tree, Grandpa's sister. Only now, she wasn't sad or still. She stood waiting, her hands outstretched, her smile warm. Grandpa stepped toward her. Mira cried out, but her voice vanished in the wind. The shadows struck. They poured from the edges of the mist, dozens of them, shaped like beasts with eyes of broken time. They rushed forward, their growls thunderless, their claws reaching not for Grandpa, but for the umbrella in Mira's hand. It shimmered, flickered, and pulled her downward. The world twisted. Suddenly, Mira was standing at the edge of the mirror gate, the umbrella held tightly above her. The shadows surrounded her in a circle, pacing silently. They didn't come closer. Not yet. Across the space, Grandpa turned. His eyes met hers. Mira saw everything in that look: regret, wonder, and a deep sorrow that had never truly left him. He shook his head once, as if to say, "It's not your burden." But Mira stepped forward. The umbrella flared to life, casting beams of gold and starlight across the shadows. They hissed and recoiled. The stars along its edge spun faster, creating a protective ring of time around her. But she could feel the weight of it now, how every second stretched thin. The umbrella was losing power. It wasn't meant to stay open this long, not without a price. Grandpa began to cross back toward her, but the ground cracked between them, a rift opened, and the river of time surged up, separating them. It tugged at his feet, trying to pull him deeper into the past. Mira reached out the umbrella, leaning as far as she dared. The shadows surged. One of them leapt. It struck the edge of the umbrella and sent her sprawling backward. The canopy shook, flickered, but held. Mira stood again, tears hot in her eyes, heart racing. She didn't know what to do. She wasn't brave, she wasn't wise. She was just a little girl holding an umbrella filled with stars. But maybe that was enough. She stepped to the edge of the rift. She planted her feet. And she opened her heart. She thought of Grandpa holding her hand during storms, of his stories by the fire, of his quiet smile when she laughed. She thought of all the little moments they had shared, soft, fleeting seconds. She let them fill her. Then, with both hands, she raised the umbrella high. It exploded with light. The stars spun outward, not just around her, but around Grandpa too. They wrapped around the rift like golden threads, stitching time closed. The shadows screamed without sound, dissolving like smoke in the morning sun. Grandpa stumbled forward and crossed into her arms. For a moment, everything was still. The umbrella, now dim and folded, floated gently down beside them. The mist faded, the gate of mirrors closed, and the world sighed in relief. The stars faded one by one, like candles blown gently in a breeze. Around Mira and Grandpa, the sky returned to its calm silver hue. The mirror gate stood quiet and still, its surface smooth and empty now. No shadows crept along the edges, no creatures stirred. The world of woven time, once filled with restless ticking and swirling mist, had gone peaceful, like a clock set gently down. Mira leaned into Grandpa's chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath the wool of his cardigan. He wrapped his arms around her, and together they knelt beside the sleeping umbrella. Its golden stars were no longer glowing, but each one held a soft shimmer, like the memory of light rather than the light itself. Neither spoke. There were no words needed. They sat in the quiet, beneath a sky that did not move, for time had paused around them just long enough for this one moment to matter. Then the umbrella stirred. Slowly, it floated upward, rising as if lifted by the last breath of magic. It opened one final time, the golden stars spinning in silence. Mira reached up, fingers brushing the smooth handle once more. The moment her skin touched the wood, the stars flared not in fire, but in warmth. A soft bell rang far away, and the ground beneath them turned to light. The attic returned. They were standing exactly where they had begun, the air filled with the scent of old books and dry wood. A single raindrop tapped against the attic window, and the storm outside had softened to a whisper. Grandpa looked around, eyes wide, lips parted slightly, as though trying to decide if he had dreamed it all, but Mira knew better. So did he. He stepped toward the wooden peg on the wall, and carefully, reverently, hung the umbrella back in its place. It sat there now, not as a mystery or a burden, but as a treasure, a reminder. Mira reached up and closed his hand in hers. They walked together down the attic stairs, back into the warm, quiet house. That night, Grandpa lit a small fire in the hearth, even though the air wasn't very cold. He poured 2 mugs of warm milk, and they sat side by side on the couch, watching the flames curl and crackle. Mira rested her head on his shoulder. For a long time, neither of them moved. Finally, Grandpa whispered something into the fire. "Time is not something we hold," he said, "but something we share. Moments are like stars, each one small, but together, they light the sky." Mira nodded against his arm. He looked down at her with a quiet smile. "You were brave," he murmured. "Braver than I ever was." Mira didn't answer. She didn't need to. Outside, the rain stopped. A pale moon rose above the trees, silvering the leaves and making the windows glow. The world felt still again, but in a new way peaceful, not paused. The house breathed calmly around them, as though it too had returned from a journey. The days that followed were gentle. Grandpa began telling more stories. Not just fairy tales or bedtime fables, but real ones, memories from when he was a boy, of his sister Lila, of times long lost. Mira listened carefully, tucking each word away like a seashell in her pocket. She stopped wondering why he had kept the umbrella secret. She understood now. Some things are only ready to be shared when someone is ready to believe. Sometimes, they returned to the attic not to travel, but to visit. The umbrella never moved on its own again. It stayed still and quiet, its magic resting. But Mira could feel it humming softly, waiting for the next time it might be needed, not just to walk through time, but to mend it, to protect it, to remember. One evening, as summer melted into autumn, Grandpa handed her a small wooden box. Inside was a folded note and an old silver key. "This was Lila's," he said, voice warm but distant. "She kept her own memories here." Mira opened the box carefully. Inside were tiny treasures, a marble with a swirl of blue, a paper feather from a storybook bird, a string of buttons tied with red thread. She looked up at Grandpa, and he nodded once. "Now, they're yours." Mira held the box against her chest. "The stars are not only in the sky," Grandpa said, "but in the things we keep close. Even when people are gone, their time stays with us in the stories we carry, in the love we pass on." That night, Mira placed the box on her windowsill. Outside, a single star blinked through the clouds, bright and patient. She didn't feel afraid anymore, not of time, not of change, not even of goodbyes, because she knew now time wasn't just something that slipped away. It was something you could hold, not in your hands, but in your heart. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, under the shelter of a time-trapped umbrella.